Christian McCaffrey owns the record for most receptions by a running back in the NFL, and he did that with the Carolina Panthers in 2019 when he had 116 receptions. Welcome to Just the Stats, NFL Top 10's for Thursday. All right, we have a NFL game tonight, so that'll be fun to watch. And then we'll have a full slate of some very important games coming up on Sunday. Big matchups. We had a big one last week between the Patriots and Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So these games are becoming more and more important as the season goes on, more critical as far as standings go and where you might finish at the end of the season as far as playoff position and so forth, maybe even a bye week. But there were some significant changes in the standings. I've been doing the standings for a few weeks now, kind of looking at them. This week, we have a big change in one of the conferences in the NFC, so we'll look at that a little bit later. But first, we're going to continue going through the season leaders in the NFL through week 10. And we'll look at a couple of players that, in my mind, there's 3 players right now that are MVP candidates. And since one of them's a quarterback, he probably has the edge. That's Matthew Stafford. Then you have Jonathan Taylor and Christian McCaffrey. On the outside, looking in right now, I might throw in Smith-Njigba. But obviously, like I said, quarterbacks tend to dominate this category. The running backs have to do something significant, but they may do that. Same with the receiver. He'd have to have a crazy good number. And right now, even though Smith-Njigba is definitely leading the NFL by quite a ways in receiving yardage, it's not good enough to make it in the top 10 yet, but he's close. So we'll see. But we'll look at some of those numbers and how good, say, McCaffrey and Taylor are doing so far. I already showed you yesterday some of the rushing numbers that Jonathan Taylor has, that if we carry them out and where he ends up on the season, he'll be in the top 10 all time in NFL touchdowns, NFL rushing yards. And we'll look at another couple of things as we go through this. So let's get started. So like I said, we'll pick up where we left off, and we'll look at the receivers. And Jamar Chase, despite not even playing last week, still leads the NFL in receptions with 76. Second up is Christian McCaffrey, one of my possible candidates for MVP. He's second with 69 receptions. Now, Puka Nacua's back on the track again. He's got 66. We might see an upswing for him now that he's playing. Amon-Ra St. Brown and Smith-Njigba, both with 64. Smith-Njigba is another candidate for MVP. And then we have a tight end, Trey McBride, at 61. Not Jake Ferguson, who continues to slowly slide down the list of top 10 players as far as receptions go. I mean, he played really well, and he still is, but now with Lamb back, it makes a big difference. 2 new players on this list, Drake London and Wan'Dale Robinson. London for the Falcons and Robinson for the Giants. They both have 53 receptions so far. But Jamar Chase has 76 to lead the NFL after week 10. Now, when it comes to receiving yards, this is what I was talking about, Smith-Njigba. He's got 1,041 receiving yards. So he's over 1,000 yards. He's the only player over 850 yards. Jamar Chase is second with 831 yards. Now, he didn't play last week, so that does make a difference, but he still maintains second spot. Puka Nacua is third with 775. Those are your top
3 right now. And I'm looking at this list. There's no team with 2, but right now there's a couple categories like this where there's a player like Smith-Njigba who are just running away with the category. So he's averaging over 100 yards a game in receiving. That's impressive. All right, now looking at touchdown leaders, Devontae Smith had another touchdown reception, so he leads the NFL with 9. And then St. Brown for the Lions had a receiving touchdown as well, so he's got 8. And then Dallas Goedert has 7. Those are your top 3. Then you got 10 players with 6. So Devontae Adams has been very consistent. He's up to 9 already. And obviously that continues to move him up the all-time charts as well. All right, let's look at receptions by running back. And obviously if Christian McCaffrey is second in the NFL in receiving, he's going to be number 1 for running backs, and he is by 20 receptions. McCaffrey, like I said, for the 49ers has 69 receptions so far this season. Devon Achane for the Dolphins has 49. That's the second best. So that's 20 behind. And then the only other player over 40 is Bijan Robinson for the Falcons with 43. I mean, then you have a big drop down to Chase Brown with 33. So there's a big gap between first and second, and then second and third and fourth spot. Big gap there. Christian McCaffrey's just dominating here. Now, this is my first take on that. If you take the fact that he has 69 receptions so far, and you extrapolate that out, he would end the season with 117 receptions, which would break his own NFL record by 1. Christian McCaffrey owns the record for most receptions by a running back in the NFL, and he did that with the Carolina Panthers in 2019 when he had 116 receptions. That's a big lead over Austin Eckler, who's second. He was with the Chargers in 2022, and he had 107. Man, unfortunately for Eckler, he just had that severe injury. I don't even know how well he's going to be able to play, if he plays again. But he's tied for second, actually, with Christian McCaffrey. So Christian McCaffrey has the top 2 spots with 116 and 107 receptions. And like I said, he's on pace right now to have the number 1 total. So he's got 69. To make it into the top 10, he's got to reach 91. Then he'll hit the top 10 officially. So what does he need? Only 22 more receptions to do that, to get into the top 10. Now, on this list of active players, you got Christian McCaffrey, and even though Austin Eckler is not playing, I include him. He's on the list twice. McCaffrey's on the list twice. And then Saquon Barkley in 2018 for the Giants had 91 receptions. That's number 10 ranked player. So you've got 5 of the top 10 spots are by players that are currently playing. That just shows you the importance of these running backs. So we're going to continue to watch Christian McCaffrey as he tries to get into the top 10 in running back receptions. Now, receiving yards by running backs. Again, obviously, Christian McCaffrey leads this category with 692 receiving yards. Now, there's a flip-flop between Robinson and Achane, despite the fact that, Achane for the Dolphins has more receptions. Robinson has more yards by quite a ways, actually. Robinson for the Falcons has 467 yards receiving, and Achane for the Dolphins has 325. So for the Dolphins, Achane's not really making as much out of the receptions as Robinson is for the Falcons. Now, those 3 are the only players over 300 yards receiving by a running back. And it's kind of interesting because Achane's over 300, Robinson's well over 400, and then Christian McCaffrey's almost at 700. There's a huge gap among them. And then after Achane, Jonathan Taylor's 4th with 260. So there's another big drop off there. But really, this is Christian McCaffrey to just see where he goes with these kind of numbers he's putting up right now. Now, Breece Hall jumped into the top 10 all the way to 7th. He has 220 yards. And then DeAndre Swift jumped into the top 10 as well. He's in 9th with 210 yards. So 2 new players in the top 10 on this list. What's funny about that is that in receptions, Gainwell for the Steelers has more than Warren does, but Warren has more yards. So that's kind of a odd factor there. All right, now we're going back to Christian McCaffrey, and this is why he's one of my MVP candidates. He's handling 50% of the plays for the 49ers on offense. So he's just been their team basically. But Christian McCaffrey, as I said, in receptions, if he continues on his pace, he'll have the number one position. That is the same thing with receiving yards. If he continues on the current pace he's on, he'll end up with 1,176 yards receiving as a running back, which would be an NFL record by quite a ways, actually. Charlie Taylor for the Redskins in 1966, that's how old this record is, almost 60 years old. He's got 1,119 yards. Christian McCaffrey would break this record significantly if he could get that, continue on the pace he's on. There's only 5 times has a running back had more than 1,000 yards receiving. And Christian McCaffrey actually was the last one to do it with 1,005 yards. Now, that would have been fun season to watch. That was 2019. Because in that season, it would have been Christian McCaffrey and Austin Eckler battling it out for the lead running back for the season. Christian McCaffrey would have won with 1,005 yards, but Austin Eckler ended the season with 993, only 12 yards behind McCaffrey. Pretty impressive. That's very similar to a battle that happened in 1985 between Lionel James for the Chargers and Roger Craig for the 49ers. In fact, it was just a little bit better on their parts. They both in 1985, and James ended up winning this race with 1,027 yards. Roger Craig had 1,016. So James in that year beat out Craig by only 9 yards. It's just interesting, though, that since 2019, that's the last year that you've had any players. And in fact, those are the only 2 active players on this list. Before 2019, you had to go all the way back to 2002 to the last player to make it into the top 10 all time. So Christian McCaffrey's pushing to get into the top 10. The only other player who has been in this top 10 twice is Marshall Faulk. And he did that. He's the second best. In 1999, he had 1,048. 1998, he had 908. So he's the only player on the list twice. So that's something. And you know what's funny is if Christian McCaffrey does make it in the top 10, that's going to bump Marshall Faulk out of the top 10 with his lower number, and Christian McCaffrey will be the only player on the list twice. So we'll see what happens with that. He's got 692 yards, I think I said, something like that. So he only needs a couple hundred yards to break into the top 10. So you give him maybe three games or so, he should be there or get very close. Now, another number here, yards from scrimmage. And 2 of my candidates, actually all 3 of them that I've mentioned, not Mike taking out Stafford, the quarterback, are in the top 5 as far as yards from scrimmage, that is. There was a flip-flop at the top. Christian McCaffrey had been at the top all season long, but then Jonathan Taylor had 286 yards from scrimmage yards last week to leapfrog over McCaffrey, and Jonathan Taylor now leads the NFL in scrimmage yards. He has 1,399 yards in 10 games. He is on quite a pace. McCaffrey is now in second with 1,318. And it doesn't sound like a lot, but it really is enough to make a difference as far as all-time numbers go. And we'll look at that in a second. But yeah, Jonathan Taylor last week had 244 yards rushing and 42 yards receiving for a total of 286, which is the most this season by quite a ways. I think the previous best was 238, something like that. So Jonathan Taylor's been impressive. And then my other possible candidate for MVP is Smith-Njigba, who now has a total of 1,063 yards from scrimmage. Most of those are all receiving. Only 22 of those yards come from running. But those three players are in the top five. And Christian McCaffrey and Taylor are the only ones. They're only the only ones over 1,150 yards. So, and they're both over 300 or 1,300. So, big lead over Bijan Robinson, who's in third with 1,146. All right, now when we're looking at this, let's see here. Thought I had this right. Hang on. I had a chart here that from yards of scrimmage, the pace that Jonathan Taylor is on would be good enough to break the NFL record. Not break the record. He'd make it into the top 10. He would not break the record. Let me look at, I'm trying to look it up real quick while I'm talking. But yeah, he's on that kind of a pace. And what's fascinating about that is, if I can find it, is that this is a hard record to break, or even to make it into the top 10, because of the fact that it's just, and I don't see it. All right, well, I'll have to find it later. I thought I had it for sure. Oh, here we go. Sorry about that. Oh, this is touchdown. So we'll have to move on to that. But yeah, Jonathan Taylor, and I don't have the number exactly. I'll have it up on the chart when I post it on YouTube. But right now he's on a pace to make it into the top 10. And I believe he would fall somewhere right in about the middle, right around Barry Sanders, who's in sixth with 2,358. But I mean, to do this, Adrian Peterson has 2,314 yards. So Jonathan Taylor needs, not quite 1,000 more yards total in the next 7 games. That just shows you the kind of pace he's on. He needs to be on. He's averaging about 139 yards a game total. So he is on a pace to make it into the top 10 all time. Now, the last person to even make it into the top 10 was Christian McCaffrey. He's the only active player on this list, and he finished third back in 2019 with 2,392 yards. Chris Johnson for the Titans, of all teams, in 2009 had 2,509 yards. That's incredible. I mean, that's just a lot. And so it would be possibly Jonathan Taylor joining Christian McCaffrey. And as I was mentioning about those differences, even though both McCaffrey and Taylor are both over 1,300 yards, and the fact that Taylor's basically about 70 to 80 yards ahead of McCaffrey, that is enough that when I extrapolated McCaffrey's numbers out for the rest of the season, he would not make it into the top 10 at the pace he's on. So only Jonathan Taylor at this point has a chance to do it. Now, obviously, things can change. I mean, what got Taylor to this point was the fact that he had 286 yards last week. All right, let's move on to touchdowns. And this is all touchdowns, not just in receiving or rushing. This is all touchdowns. And Jonathan Taylor obviously leads this category because he's got 15 rushing touchdowns, and he's also got 2 receiving. So he's got a total of 17 touchdowns, which is way ahead of the next best. Josh Jacobs for the Packers has 11 touchdowns, 17-11. Jamar Gibbs has 10. And then you have some players with 9 or 8 and on down. But really, we're talking about a one-man race here, which is why Jonathan Taylor. That's what makes an MVP, though. You stand out from the rest of the pack, and he's doing it in yards, rushing, yards from scrimmage, touchdowns. He's just doing it all. And so we'll see how that continues on. To be an MVP, you just have to have an outstanding season. You got to be able to play basically the entire season as well. As soon as you get hurt, it just drops you out, no matter how good you might have been playing, depending how early you get hurt. But right now, Jonathan Taylor has 17 touchdowns. Now, like I was saying, when you extrapolate this out, he's got 17. To make it into the top 10, he needs 23. So he only needs 6 more. Even if he just averages 1 touchdown a game, that would put him into the top 10. But right now, he's on a pace to get 29 touchdowns in 2025. And if he does, that would put him into second all-time for most touchdowns in a single season. The only person who would be ahead of him would be LaDainian Tomlinson for the Chargers, who in 2006 had 31. Only player to ever get to 30. He's got 31. Jonathan Taylor would have 29. And then you have Sean Alexander for the Seahawks, who in 2005 had 28. This is kind of a funny stat to look at because you look at the top 5 numbers. Marshall Faulk let me back up one spot. Emmitt Smith for the Cowboys in 1995 set the record when he had 25 touchdowns. He had broken the record that John Riggins had set in 83 with 24. So Riggins in 83 had 24. Emmitt Smith in 1995 had 25. 5 years later, here comes Marshall Faulk. In the year 2000 for the Rams, he gets 26. 3 years later, Priest Holmes for the Chiefs in 2003 gets 27. Sean Alexander for the Seahawks 2 years later in 2005 gets to 28. And then Tomlinson for the Chargers in 2006, the very next year, gets 31. Now, that's it. We did have Randy Moss break into the top 10 in 2007. That's the last player to make it into this top 10 list. And that's been 18 years since a player's been able to even get into the top 10. Now, last year, I don't even think anybody made it to 20 touchdowns total. But right now, Jonathan Taylor is on pace to break into the top 10. I got to pick up the pace. So that's a look at all our some of our season numbers. Jonathan Taylor's been outstanding, and McCaffrey's been outstanding as well. Let's run through these standings in the NFL right now, and then we'll call it a wraps for today. New England Patriots. We're looking at the AFC East here. New England Patriots are 8-2. This was a big week last week because they were able to beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the same time the Buffalo Bills were losing to the Miami Dolphins. So that now gives the New England Patriots, instead of a half-game lead, they now have a game-and-a-half lead over the Buffalo Bills. And in the division, the Patriots right now are 2-0. The Buffalo Bills are 2-2. So that could be another factor in the favor of the Patriots right now. This is pretty amazing to see the possibility that 2 teams, the Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs, who have been winning their division consistently for years, neither one of them may be able to hold on to the division win, to be the division winner this year. But now there's still plenty of games left to go. The Patriots have 7. The Buffalo Bills have 8. So there's a lot to go, a lot of time left, but still it's a little bit of a cushion that the Patriots didn't have going into the week. Now, a different division, AFC North, very different setup here. Everybody else was losing while the Baltimore Ravens were winning. They've now won 3 in a row. They've went from the bottom to the to second right now. Pittsburgh Steelers are first. They lost, though. They're 5-4. The Baltimore Ravens now are just a game back at 4-5. And then Cincinnati Bengals, despite losing 2 now, are 3-6. They're only 2 games back. And they're 2-0 in the division. So, this is a tight division. Now, the Cleveland Browns are 2-7. So they're looking from the outside in. But this is such a tight division with those 3 teams. And really, the Baltimore Ravens are beginning to look much better than they did early on in the season. Now, in the AFC South, unlike the situation with New England and Buffalo, except even better for the Colts, they won their game while the Jacksonville Jaguars lost. So they now have a 2.5 game lead. So they had a game and a half lead, and they bumped it up to 2.5. The Houston Texans are at 4-5. Tennessee Titans are 1-8. So right now, the Colts really have a pretty good grip on this division. It's not really close. What could make it close is the fact that the Jaguars still have to play the Colts twice. So that could make a difference. But they really would have to win both of them, honestly. They'd have to beat the Colts twice. That's going to be hard to do, to even, get within reach of them. I mean, right now, if they won 2 times, well, they would basically almost time. They'd be a half game behind. So they really do. They're going to have to win those games against the Colts. The Jaguars are. And the way they're playing right now, that won't happen. But that will be what they probably will have to do. Now, in the AFC West, this has been a fun game, fun division to watch. Denver Broncos now are 8-2. They're on a 7-game winning streak, as is the New England Patriots. The Chargers are on a 3-game winning streak. They're 7-3. And then you have the Kansas City Chiefs, who didn't play. They're 5-4. And the Raiders, who are 2-7. Now, what's interesting about this is the Chiefs went on a little bit of a winning streak there and pulled within a game of the Chargers and the Broncos. But since then, they are now 2.5 games behind the Broncos for first and a game and a half behind the Chargers for second. And they also are on the wrong end of the division standings, where the Chargers are 3-0 in the division. So Chiefs are going to have a hard time coming back and winning this division. They may end up making the playoffs, but right now it looks much more like a wild card team. And right now they're not even in the playoffs. But obviously they have a good enough team to make some moves there. Now we move over to the NFC East, and here's one division that the Philadelphia Eagles, it's just a matter of time before they wrap it up. They're 7-2. They've won 3 in a row, while everybody else is on losing streaks of at least 2 games. Dallas Cowboys are 3-5-1. The Commanders are 3-7, and the Giants are 2-8. Just fired their coach. They're all on losing streaks. So, the Eagles have almost a 4-game winning, a 3.5 game lead or so over the Cowboys. This really is a division that, like I said, it's a matter of time. The Commanders can't keep the quarterback and on the field, and McLaurin hasn't played much at all this year. Not really any outstanding running backs. It's been rough for them. The Cowboys, without a defense, it's just made it tough for them as well. So Eagles pretty much have this division wrapped up. Now in the NFC North, again, a different story here. This is the division I was talking about earlier when I kind of hinted at it or teased it about a big shift. The Green Bay Packers going into last week were in first place with a 5-2-1 record. They lost. They dropped from first to third because while they were losing, the Lions and the Bears were winning. They're both 6-3 now, and the Green Bay Packers are 5-3-1. So the Packers dropped from first to third, and that's deservedly so. They're losing some games that I just don't understand it. Sometimes their offense looks horrible, and I just don't get it. Their defense is good, but they're not finding ways to win, whereas the Bears and Lions are. The Bears are 6-3, they've lost some. They must have lost some games by quite a score, because right now their points for are 239. Their points against are 247. So they're in the negative as far as that goes, and yet they're 6-3. Now they've played much better in the second half of this. Well, the last several games, they're on a 2-game winning streak right now. And then the Detroit Lions are in first place. So, which is where they finished last year. And they're looking good. They've been a high-scoring team, a decent defense, and despite the fact that they, have lost games that you were wondering about, they're looking good. Now, the Minnesota Vikings, I didn't mention, they're 4-5, so they're only 2 games back of Detroit Lions. They are 2-0 in the division, interestingly. They have the best division record. Well, the Green Bay Packers are 1-0. But the Detroit Lions, despite leading the division, are 1-2 in the division, and the Chicago Bears are 0-2. So this is a division that has a lot of play still left in it. From first to last, you're talking about a 2-game swing. That's it. That doesn't take long to overcome. Now, in the NFC South, another tough division. Everybody lost except the New Orleans Saints, of all people. They won their game, and everybody else lost. So the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are now 6-3. They lost a tough game to the Patriots. So it wasn't like an embarrassing type loss, but it was still a loss. Carolina Panthers lost to the Saints. Only scored 7 points in that game. They're 5-5 now. The Atlanta Falcons lost. They're on a 4-game losing streak. So they were 3-2. They are now 3-6. Just can't get their act together lately, allowing too many points and not scoring enough at all. Tampa Bay Buccaneers still have they're in good, solid position. They're going to get some players back someday. Godwin keeps teasing that he's coming back. Irving is now possibly going to be back, and if he's not back this week, he'll be back next week, I believe. So they get Godwin and Irving back, and then at some point, Mike Evans, they should be looking pretty good. They're leading the division in a 2-0 right now. No one else is that good. So Tampa Bay Buccaneers, despite only having a half-game lead over the Carolina Panthers, I guess it's a half game. Maybe it's a 1-game lead. 6-3 to 5-5, are still in control of their division. All right, last division we look at, and then we'll call it a wraps. The NFC West. This is a very tough division, minus the Arizona Cardinals. They're 3-6, but the Seattle Seahawks, the Los Angeles Rams are both 7-2. They're both on a 4-game winning streak. Big game for them coming up. San Francisco 49ers are now 6-4. So they're a game back. This is a very tough division. This is one of the tougher ones. There's a couple like this, but this is a fun division to watch. Seattle Seahawks have looked so impressive, and have the Rams. I mean, you got Stafford playing well. Darnold is incredible passing percentage. Last week, they basically shut their team down after the first half when they had already scored about 37 points in the first half. So they both have really good defenses. These two teams are going to be battling it out, not just for their division, but possibly to see which one of them may go to the Super Bowl. I mean, they look that good. The NFC has 3 good teams right now, at least. Seahawks, the Rams, the Eagles, that are going to be battling it out to see who goes against whoever may come out on top in the AFC. All right, that is a look at the standings. It's been a interesting situation in different divisions. I'm a Jaguar fan, hoping that they would win. They lost. Hoping the Colts would lose. They came back and won. The flip-flop of what I was hoping for seems to be the way my fantasy leagues have been going as well, unfortunately. But now tomorrow, we will look at some top 10 numbers for the teams and a few other odds and ends that I'm looking into. and we'll be ready. We'll talk about the Thursday night game, obviously, and see what happened in there. Maybe, hopefully, something exciting came out of that game that we can talk about as well. But that is a wrap for this episode. Appreciate you listening. Please like and subscribe. Thank you to all the new listeners, subscribers. Appreciate everybody that listens, but please subscribe. That's helpful. And you can find this podcast on YouTube, on video or audio, at Just the Stats NFL. You'll find this podcast. You'll see all the charts I've been putting up, the standing charts, the top 10 charts that I mentioned, and I list all the top 10 players and all those things. And you can also find the podcast on Apple, Spotify, whatever app you might use to listen to your podcasts. You can contact me at justthestatsnfl@gmail.com. And again, I appreciate you listening. So that is a wrap for this episode of NFL Top 10s for Thursday.